Whoa.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice and heavy with an impromptu percussion. That was great. Thank you.
Good.
Tough act to beat, though. That's right. That's right. Talking about Lent, this is the first Sunday of Lent. It began a few days ago, Ash Wednesday. Now, Lent remembers the time of Jesus in the wilderness being tempted. It's a 40-day period. Of course, for those of you who are counting on your fingers and toes, it's more like 45 days. And that's because the Sundays of Lent are considered mini Easters. That the normal restrictions of Lent are lifted on Sundays. Just for your information, again, those of you who are actually counting and figuring out how long this is, that's why the numbers don't quite work out specifically. It is a time of preparation and reflection in preparation to celebrate Holy Week. The events of Holy Week, in particular, the crucifixion and the resurrection. But there are also some important lessons and things that we can draw from the story of Jesus' time in the desert. May come as a surprise to read that Jesus was tempted. And that actually being tempted is not the problem. That kind of helps us to understand why Jesus went in the wilderness to begin with. 40 is always a number signifying preparation. And so being in the wilderness 40 days and 40 nights is a time where he prepared for future ministry. The incarnation is one of those huge mysteries that I do not claim to understand in minute detail by any stretch of the imagination, but I do affirm that Jesus was completely divine and completely human. So temptation for him was real, but he is the only human who has the power and insight to overcome. But again, temptation is not the issue. Jesus was tempted. That's not a problem. If anything, it's an assurance. The choir sang very well, he lives. Well, we can also turn that to he lived. Because he's been through all this. There's nothing new, in essence at least, nothing new that we're facing as humans that Jesus has not faced himself and overcome. So we can turn to him for strength and guidance, and we can turn to him for forgiveness when we don't do so well, when we allow our temptations to work their way into action. But what's going on with Jesus' temptations? Now, I told you before that the end of Matthew 3 and Matthew 4 run into each other. It's a section that is best understood all together to really appreciate what's going on. A lot has been done about what do these temptations that Jesus experienced, what do they really signify as far as what's going on in our life. And there's some value in looking at that. I'm going to kind of work my way backwards, work my way up, because the last temptation, Satan saying, bow down and worship me, and all of these kingdoms, all this splendor, all this glory will be yours. Which is a pretty big offer. Except that's what Jesus was already heading for. He was going to be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So to offer him all the kingdoms is something he was already getting. If anything, Satan was offering him the easy way. That he could have all these kingdoms and all this splendor without the cross. So Satan was, in a sense, offering Jesus the easy way to part of his destiny. obvious temptations. We are a people of immediate gratification, whether we like to admit it or not. It seems to me most people, if you were given a choice of power, fame, comfort, right now, for the rest of your life, and eternity is a huge question. A lot of people will say, I'll take the sure thing. I can see riches. I know what discomfort is like, and I would like comfort. People tend to go for the sure thing and the tangible, and the eternal, well, you don't touch that, you don't see that, and it's easier to ignore that. We may not do it in the extreme, but, in ways where it really comes down to it. How many times do we cheat on diets? How many times do we fudge on our budget? How many times do we make decisions right now, just one time, that we know we're going to pay for later? That's a very, very small example of the huge that Jesus is being offered, but in some degree or another, we are creatures of the immediate, of the tangible, and of the easy way. And that's what Jesus was being offered. Throwing himself off the temple, ahead of everybody, kind of functions on a few different levels. On the one hand, it's putting God to the test, saying, okay, God, this is the promise that you made. Are you really going to keep this? Are you really going to